Okay, greetings. Okay, so I'm just waiting for my Instagram to come up. Okay, so I'm live on there. So greetings everyone. Um, hang on 1 second. There we go. So my name is June Allen, and I am the founder of the Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So I hope you're all doing well wherever you are joining me on the planet. So today I want to talk to you about critical thinking. Okay, I want to talk to you about critical thinking. Now, whether you realize it or not, being able to think critically is a crucial, essential, non-negotiable part of your process. Good afternoon. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining. It's a critical part of your healing process. Okay, so I really want to talk to you about it today. I want to talk to you about what critical thinking is. I want to talk to you about why it's important and how to actually go about doing it. Okay, so today's session is inspired by my study circle that's going to be going live. It's going to be launched on the 6th of October. That's a Thursday, not this Thursday, next Thursday. Very, very excited about that. We'll have the opportunity to pick the book that's been selected for the study circle, and then for us to really indulge and really get into it. If you're interested in joining the study circle or thinking about any of the books, looking at any of the books that we've 4 books that we've selected to be chosen. Oh, I think I'm going to sneeze. Oh, is it going to sneeze? Am I going to sneeze or not? No, it might come back. It might come back in a minute. But yeah, so there's 4 books that I and the ladies in the group have chosen for selection, for the final selection of what we're going to be doing on when the book launches. So if you go to click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. All the information about when the book club is, what it's about, how to join, how much it is, all that sort of stuff is all on the website. Okay, so it's inspired by that, because in the sessions, the critical thinking part of it is an important part of the process. Okay, so that's why critical thinking is really important. So I wanted to come on today and talk about it because it's an important part of that whole process. If you've got any questions at all about anything that I share in this live, you can drop something in the comments, or you can email me info@yardofgreatness.com if there's something that you don't want to share publicly. And to remember as well that anything that I share on this live is for informational purposes only, and it's not a substitute for seeing a licensed therapist. Okay, so let's really get into the content. So what exactly is critical thinking? And I had to pause for a minute and really think about it, because I kind of know what it is, but I didn't really know how to articulate and how to define it properly. So obviously, as part of my research and doing this live, I Googled it and just read a few articles about, what exactly is critical thinking. And, the thing that really stood out for me the most is the idea that critical thinking is thinking about your thoughts. Okay, in a nutshell, that's what it is. Critical thinking is thinking about your thoughts. Okay, it's about asking questions. Okay, it's about asking questions about how you think the way that you think, why you think the way that you think, what is the impact of your thinking. Okay, how do we process our thoughts the way that we process them. Okay, and most importantly, how much of your thinking is your own actual thinking, your own decisions, and how much of it is being ingested externally. Okay, so as black people, this is something that we really need to think about as well. And this is the layer that I always bring into it. Everything is always racialized. There's always a cultural element, a racial element to all of the work that I do with my clients. And in the study circle, it's going to be no different. So being able to ask yourself the questions and understanding what has been externalized, what have you internalized, okay, from an external perspective, what have you internalized from society, what have you internalized around your family, okay, what exactly are your thoughts, what are your thoughts a decision that you've made, okay, or is it just something that you've just internalized and you accept as gospel? Okay, so critical thinking is a process that you can go through that will help you make those two distinctions. What is yours and what belongs to other people? Is what you've ingested from externally, does it really sit well with your values? These are some of the issues why critical thinking is important for you to really think about. Okay, is it really you, or does it belong to somebody else? Okay, so when you start to ask yourself these questions and begin to unpack them, then you can really start to reclaim your sense of self. You start to reclaim your sense of self, because the more that you start to ask yourself questions, you can then begin to decide, well, actually, I know that I might have thought X, Y, Z about this, but actually I don't feel like that. That really came from my parents, or that came from, my siblings, or that came from a group that I was in, or that came from my community. That's not something that really sits well with me. Therapy, even as a in of itself, is something that, as a culture, this is something that really, as black people, this is something that we're only just starting to accept. I know before I started doing therapy, the thoughts that I had about it was that therapy was for white people. Why are black people going to these white therapists to chat the community business? And I just thought therapy was for white people. I didn't really understand, which is actually one of the reasons why I decided to become a therapist, actually, because I wanted to disrupt a lot of that thinking. But in my own critical thinking about my values and stuff around therapy, I understood that thinking about, well, therapy is for white people, it came from a traumatized community, our traumatized community, that where the therapy culture, therapy as a profession, wasn't very inclusive. It didn't include a cultural context. It didn't include my experience as a black woman, to be able to have honest conversations about how as a society, how that includes me as an individual still living under the system of racism, and still having to deal with, even within the therapy profession, in terms of the training and all of that, there are still elements of that is still racist. That's real talk. A lot of white therapists are still not doing this work around this work around racial trauma and stuff like that. They're not doing the intercultural work, because they're not required to do their own internal work to the depths that is needed for a lot of black clients to feel safe, okay, to be able to work with a lot of white therapists. And these are the reasons why, the clients come to work with me, because I'm very vocal about the work that I do. I'm very vocal about applying the cultural context as part of the critical thinking process. How are you going to learn? How are you going to reclaim your own sense of self? How are you going to reclaim your culture? How are you going to really understand what you've internalized about race, unless you're having these critical thinking conversations? You need to be having these not just the critical thinking conversations, but also, how do you process all of that? Okay, how do you process all of that? Hi, thanks for joining. And this stuff is a really, really important part of the critical thinking process, in terms of how I work with clients. Okay, because the goal of that critical thinking is to reclaim your sense of self, is to reclaim your culture. Okay, is to reclaim your mind. Steve Biko says, that our mind is the tool that is used by the oppressor, to keep us in control. I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember the quote exactly, but it's about, the mind of the oppressed is how the system keeps us under control. Okay, it keeps us under control by making sure that our thinking remains identifying with the oppressor. And if you're not doing the critical thinking work, if you're not doing the inner work and asking yourself all of these questions, your thinking is just going to stay in that mindset, because you don't even know that you're thinking that way. Okay, so really this critical thinking conversation is really important, because it is really about reclaiming yourself. Okay, the other thing that's really important about critical thinking is that it helps us make better choices. Okay, if you understand, if you're asking yourself questions and not just accepting what somebody else said, if you're doing that exploratory work, if you're giving yourself permission to unpack and evaluate and do all that kind of stuff, you're going to make better choices. Because if you understand your values, then you understand why you're doing something, or why you're thinking a certain way, or why you're making the choices that you need to make. For a lot of us, we've had to just go along with what's going on in society, or go along with what's going on in our families, or going along with what's happening in our relationships, because we've been trained to keep the peace. We've been trained not to rock the boat. We've been trained not to go against the system. Okay? We've been designed we've been trained that we have to keep our mouths shut. Okay? And often that's been a survival response. Okay, often that's a survival response because we don't want to, lose our jobs. We don't want to break up relationships. We don't want to get in trouble from this. We don't want the system to be attacking us for whatever, for different reasons. So we keep quiet. We keep ourselves small. We don't question anything. We accept that that's what's happening. Okay, and we just get on with it because that is a survival behavior that we've practiced and that we're used to that. So we think that there is no other way. Okay, but when you start to think critically, you begin to recognize that, oh, maybe, I mean, for me, given my own example, parenting was a huge thing for me in terms of my critical thinking. I began, as soon as I start to ask the question about, well, okay, if I'm going to become a parent, am I just going to accept the way that my parents parented me? Or am I going to choose a different way of parenting that's going to feel right in my spirit in terms of how do I want my daughter to be? What type of adult do I want my child to be? Okay? The stuff that I went through in therapy, I recognized through my own process that there's a lot of pain and a lot of behaviors and a lot of cultural things that got passed down that didn't sit well with me. Okay, and I was not going to pass that pain on to my daughter. So it was important for me to have that conversation with myself and to do all the critical thinking. Hi, Gabriel, thanks for joining. It was important for me to do all of that work, okay, and in therapy, and to be able to read what I needed to read, talk to my therapist about all of that stuff, to make sure that I'm constantly asking the question around my daughter. Am I doing it because my parents did it to me? Or am I doing it because it feels right in my spirit and it's part of my values? And what's the impact that it's going to have on my relationship with my daughter? What's the daughter mother relationship going to look like if I choose to do this thing? And that's because I went through a whole process of thinking critically about what I'm doing and what's going to be the impact of that thing, rather than making choices from an unconscious place because that's what my parents did to me, and so I'm going to pass that on, or what society says that I should, do with as a parent with my child, and that's supposed to. I'm not coming from that unconscious place. Okay, so thinking critically is going to take you out of that place of unconsciousness, okay, and allows you to make better decisions that are right for you, that sit within your values. So Empress Ebanks is saying critical thinking encompasses the ability to discern. Discernment, that's the word. Thank you for that. And make informed choices. Discernment is so important. For me, when I think about the word discernment within the context of critical thinking, it means taking a step back. Okay? It means taking a step back and pausing. And okay, you might have the old thought in your head about doing something, but when you have discernment and when you have better critical thinking skills, you're not just going to take action just because you thought it. You're going to pause and you're going to step back and go, actually, this is what my thinking is doing. This is what my thinking says is the right thing to do in this situation. But actually, is this thing that I'm thinking is actually right for me? And where is that conversation coming from? Okay, where is that conversation coming from? Is it an external place it's coming from? Or is it coming from that place inside me? Okay, that is part of my values, that is part of who I am, that is going to feel good in my soul to be able to do that. Am I going to feel good about myself if I take this decision? Is this the right decision for me? Am I taking this decision because I don't want other people to think that I'm a certain type of way, or am I making this decision because other people might get pissed off, but it's the right decision for me because it's sitting in my values? Okay, this is all what critical thinking is. Okay, when it comes to making better choices, you have to be willing to have those honest conversations with yourself in order to make the right decision for you. And this is not about pissing other people off or doing things that are going to hurt other people. This is about you being able to stand in who you are in your values, okay, because you know who you are, and because you have self-acceptance, and you have the confidence to be able to stand in the choices that you make because you've thought about this critically, and you're not going to be a sheep. Okay, you're not going to be a sheep. So this is the other thing that's really good about critical thinking, and why it's important, because it increases your knowledge. Okay, you're not just going to accept something just because somebody said it. You're not going to accept something just because because your parents said it. You know, this is one of the most difficult things about doing this work, is making those types of changes, because our parents have you know, they've passed down a lot of things that might not necessarily work for you. And sometimes our, you know, parents will feel disrespected because you're choosing to do something different than what they would normally do. Okay, so that can be quite painful. That can be quite a difficult process if you're not used to saying no to your parents. But what's important is that you have to be able to stand in the fact that you're a grown up, and sometimes you have to make decisions that your parents are not necessarily going to like. The other thing that the parents might not necessarily like is that if you're making decisions for you that are different to what your parents made, okay, it might trigger something in them. It might trigger shame in them. It might trigger shame in them because they've chosen to do things a different way. And your actions doing something different, it might end up triggering shame in them, which might end up the parent saying or doing things or saying things to you, being judgmental to you, to try and deflect from the shame that they feel about the things that they didn't do. I hope that makes sense. So critical thinking is important, because when you have increased knowledge about the things that you do and why you do them, you're not going to be swayed by other people trying to manipulate you, or parents trying to shame you into going back to the things that they want you to do because they actually feel ashamed of their own behavior, if that makes sense. Okay, so this increased knowledge is so important, because you're not just going to accept things that other people say. And again, it's your opportunity to stand in who you are, to stand in your own sense of confidence, to stand in the choices that you've made, to stand in your own your right to actually take up space in the world, and that you're not just going to be a sheep and do the things that other people ask you to do. And just remembering that this is how the system wants us to operate. Under this system, whether it's patriarchy, racism, you know, all of those oppressive systems just expect us to keep our mouth shut and just get on with it. Okay, we're just supposed to keep our mouth shut and get on with it and not question anything, because the system needs us to behave a certain way so that it can continue to maintain the dysfunction. Okay, so again, this is where the anti-racist part of it comes in, the resisting all of the anti-blackness and all the rest of it. Critical thinking, when you increase your knowledge, okay, it gives you an opportunity to be all of the to do all of the anti-racist work and resist all of the oppressive stuff without actually realize that you're doing it. Okay, with more knowledge comes more self-acceptance. Okay, and the thing is, once you learn, you can't unlearn. Once it comes out of your unconscious into your conscious, you can't go back, which is a good thing, which means you're going to grow. Okay, you're going to grow. All of that curiosity, all of that the researching that you're doing, trying to understand and increase your knowledge, being more analytical. Is this the right thing that I should be doing? Why am I behaving that way? Why do I feel this way? Is it other people making me feel this way, or is it internal? Is my internal GPS, is my internal sense of self and values, is that off because I'm doing something that's off? Okay, the more that you do all of that, the more increased knowledge you're going to have, the better self-esteem you're going to have. It's going to increase your confidence, because you're starting to trust yourself in a way that you weren't allowed to do before, because the system wants to keep you small. Those dysfunctional family members that don't want you to change, that don't want you to go to therapy, that don't want you to ask questions, they want to keep you small because it makes them feel better about their own smallness. Okay, I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. Those family members that are trying to keep you small, okay, they want to keep you small because then it takes off the responsibility of them, okay, from their own smallness. They don't want you to to question things. They don't want you to go to therapy. They don't want you to ask questions. They don't want you to change because it suits them. It suits them, and they can sit in their own ignorance and they don't have to take responsibility. But the more you research, the more you're analytical, the more you explore things, the more you challenge your own thinking and why things are happening, why you feel the way you do, why you behave the way you behave, okay, your life can never be the same. Your thinking can never be the same. Your relationships can never be the same when you start thinking more critically. And this is why the study circle is so important, and why critical thinking is an important part of that. So when you join if you decide to join the study circle and we do the critical thinking, okay, I actually create the questions. When we read the book, okay, we read the book live in the session. We don't go off and read it by ourselves. We read it live in the session, and I create questions around critical thinking that allow you to start to unpack. And obviously, because I'm a qualified therapist, I'm going to ask you stuff from a therapeutic perspective for you to really understand yourself, to unpack what's going on inside you as we're reading the text. And then as you start to ask yourself these questions, okay, that will be presented at each session, and then you start to hear the other people in the group sharing their own experience as well, that again elevates your critical thinking, because whether you identify with what the person's saying or whether you don't agree, it opens up your mind, it opens up your thinking, because it's a different perspective. You know, critical thinking is not just about agreeing with the other person or trying to find necessarily common ideals. It's about opening up your mind to thinking about different perspectives. It's about thinking about different ways of viewing a situation. Okay, so again, whether you agree with that person or whether you agree with the text or not, it's opening up your mind. Okay, it's opening up your mind for more problem solving. It's opening up your mind so that you can start to trust yourself. It's opening up your mind so that you can trust your thinking process and to begin to make different sorts of decisions. And it changes your view of the world. It's going to change your view of relationships. It's going to open up your mind and change your view of how you feel, how you perceive yourself. Okay? It's going to open you up to loads and loads of different perspectives about the world and about how people relate to each other. Okay? It's really going to open up so many things, and that is really exciting for me. That is really exciting for me. You know, a lot of the ladies that I work with, they come into therapy, you know, with a lot of mindsets that are not really in alignment with who they are. They don't know who they are. A lot of times people come to me and they say, well, actually, I don't know what I need. I don't know who I am. But then what they do know is that a lot of them are in a lot of pain. A lot of them are in a lot of pain because of the stuff that other people externally, usually family members or the workplace, are putting on them. They're coming with a lot of pain and stress around not feeling like they even belong to themselves. They feel lost. They're in a lot of pain. They feel disconnected from who they are. They don't know who they are. And so the process that I work with them is about giving them permission to just unpack whatever's going on for them, to really be able to identify, you know, what is really, how they're really feeling, what's going on in their body, how do they feel about their black body. And again, the process that I work with clients in the study circle is all going to be about helping them to unpack, you know, what really belongs to other people and what belongs to me. What are really my choices? And sometimes it's the first time in their lives that they've really taken pause, they've taken steps to slow down and think about, well, actually, who am I? What do I want? What is really going on in my life? Sometimes they come in so busy, because to stop and think about what they want or what they need is something that feels quite scary as well, because they're just being on the hamster wheel and just keep going. They can avoid everything, because quite often when they stop and pause, they realize that there's a lot of things that they're unhappy about. There's a lot of things that are not working for them. There's a lot of relationships that are causing them a lot of pain. There's family members that are causing them a lot of pain, but they don't want to look at it or ask themselves the questions, the critical thinking questions about what's really, really going on. But the minute they start having those conversations, the minute we start to talk about what's going on, and there's permission and there's safety and there's support and there's empathy, there's compassion, once those elements come into the space, that's when people start to really release and they start to talk. There's often tears, because people then really start to feel heard. And when people start to really feel heard, that's when change can really happen. So what I really do in the study circle is provide a container for those critical thinking questions. I provide a container for that text, okay, to underpin and inform the conversations. But then the critical thinking questions, which will be accompanying the text, they will help all of the attendees to just release whatever's going on for them, to understand what's going on for them, to be able to release what's going on for them, and then to make the appropriate changes needed for their lives to be something different, for them to have a different relationship with themselves, for them to have a different relationship with society, for them to have a different relationship with their loved ones, whatever that looks like. You know, critical thinking is it's a non-negotiable part of this process. You know, it's not just about a lot of the thing is a misconception about therapy as well is that, you know, people can come to therapy and think that, oh, they're coming for advice. You're not coming for advice. Okay, you're not coming to therapy for advice. I don't give clients advice. I help clients understand, or give them permission to understand what's going on for them. Okay, I ask the questions to help them find themselves. I provide a safe space for clients to unpack, okay, what's going on for them, so they can answer, so you get to answer with their own questions. I actually don't tell clients what to do. I show them where to look. Okay, I don't tell clients what to do. I show them where to look. Okay, I show clients where to look, because then you get to have an understanding as to, okay, well, I'm going to open this door of my life. Maybe that's what's causing what's going on today. Maybe there's other doors that need to be opened. Maybe there's doors that have been, they've been shut down for years. You know, and I've had a lot of that. I've had a lot of clients come to me and tell me stuff that they haven't told anyone because they just didn't feel safe enough to do it. And that for me is a real honour and privilege, and why I do what I do. Because there's not enough of us, as black people, as black women. We're not being heard. We don't feel heard. We spend a lot of time in our lives, whether it's in relationships or whether it's parents or at work or whatever, where we're not being heard. We're just not being heard. And so we get so used to not being heard that we just keep our mouth shut. And then that creates resentment. It creates resentment. It creates anger. This is what often underpins a lot of the angry black woman conversation. The reason why so many black women are angry, because they're not being heard. And if black women open their mouths, they're angry, they're aggressive, and people don't want to hear. The angry black woman stereotype is there for a reason. And black women have a right to be angry. Okay, we have a right to be angry because there are so many areas in our lives that we're not being heard. And so this study circle that I'm going to be launching on the 6th of October is going to be that type of space. Whatever text is being chosen, it will be a space for black women to be heard. Okay, and we do that through the process of critical thinking. You will be given the opportunity to question, how you show up in the world, to question who you are, to question what is going on for you and what do you need. Okay, if you're interested in anything that I've shared today, if you're interested in coming on the journey with us, okay, with critical thinking being a key part of that, you can click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. So that's it for today. Okay, so I hope that you found this useful. If you know anyone else that's really interested in critical thinking, that wants a space to be able to learn how to do that, I will be talking more about what critical thinking does and how to actually apply the process within the context of the book and all the rest of it. All of that you'll learn if you join the study circle. The doors are going to be open on Friday this week, for you to join. I will be, if you want to actually choose the books, there's 4 books, as like I said, that I've chosen, which will be obviously streamlined, and one will be chosen for the study circle that opens on the 6th of October. So if you want to choose the book, you can click the link in my bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net, and you can see all of the books there. I did some live streams as well last week on each of the books, so you can listen to those live streams to make a choice about which book that you would love to study with us in this study circle. All right, any questions, drop me a DM, send me an email, info@yardofgreatness.com. If you know someone that would be interested in this, please share it with them, and I will see you next time. Take care, have an amazing day, and I'll speak to you next time. Take care, bye. Okay, cool.